After 25 years of independence, the 1990s saw a new generation of political leaders and several other significant political changes. But first, the army had to solve a rather large problem when 3 elephants turned up on Pulau Tekong, an island the soldiers used for training. A more serious problem occurred with the Singapore Airlines hijack. Commandos stormed the plane in a 30-second operation. Only the 4 hijackers were killed. After the success of the opposition in the 1980s, the government heeded the desire for a greater range of voices in Parliament. It introduced non-constituency members of Parliament in 1984 and mooted nominated members of Parliament in 1989.
Nominated MPs who are independent of political parties and speaking for those who feel that their interests are not adequately represented by the ruling or opposition parties.
It was a big change for a government sometimes described as authoritarian. But an even bigger change was looming. Lee Kuan Yew, Singapore's leader since even before independence, was stepping down. On November 27, 1990, he submitted his resignation to President Wee Kim Wee.
I now ask the Prime Minister-designate, Mr. Goh Chok Tong, to come forward and take his oath of office, followed by the ministers he has designated as members of his cabinet.
I, Goh Chok Tong, having been appointed to the office of Prime Minister, do solemnly affirm that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Republic of Singapore and that I will preserve.
For many, it was hard to imagine a Singapore without Lee Kuan Yew as Prime Minister. Would the country continue on its path of success?
My mission is clear: to ensure that Singapore thrives and grows after Mr. Lee Kuan Yew. To find a new group of men and women to help me carry on where he and his colleagues left off.
On the economic front, at least, it seemed business as usual. One of the first things the new Prime Minister did was to open Changi Airport's Terminal 2. There were other signs of Singapore's continued rapid growth. By the end of the 90s, it had amassed nearly $130 billion in foreign reserves. But how to ensure that those reserves were wisely spent? In 1991, the Constitution was amended to empower an elected president to safeguard the national reserves. In 1993, Singapore's first presidential election was held. One of the 2 candidates was Ong Teng Cheong. Just a year earlier, as Deputy Prime Minister, he had been diagnosed with cancer. To make things worse, the other Deputy Prime Minister, Lee Hsien Loong, also had cancer. However, by the time of the presidential election, both men's cancers were in remission. In 1993, Ong Teng Cheong became the first elected president with 59% of the vote.
I, Ong Teng Cheong, having been elected President of the Republic of Singapore, do solemnly affirm that I will faithfully discharge my duties as such to the best of my ability.
The nation would take time to figure out the president's exact role. During Ong's presidency, there would be 4 constitutional amendments to try to further define the president's powers. With a new prime minister and a new president, Singapore's policies were also changing. Novel methods of tackling problems included the corrective work order. Litterbugs were ordered to clean up public spaces. And a new strategy was employed in Singapore's perennial war on traffic jams.
You're watching News 5 tonight. It's news from the home front next. Electronic road pricing made its historic start at the East Coast Parkway this morning. And Communications Minister Ma Bao Tan said the ultimate aims to reduce traffic there by 10 to 20%.
The ERP gantries on the ECP no longer say on 10.
Instead of discouraging car ownership with certificates of entitlement and road taxes, the arsenal now included discouraging car use through measures like the ERP. New technology did away with the hassle of the area licensing scheme of the 80s that involved windshield discs and checks by officers. Day 1 got off to a slightly shaky start.
While traffic volume on the ECP during restricted hours dropped by a fifth, ironically, travel speeds didn't get any faster. LTA believed motorists slowed down for various reasons, like checking that cash was being deducted from the IUs.
The new leadership also had to deal with several unforeseen incidents, such as the Michael Fay case. In 1994, American teenager Michael Fay was sentenced to 6 strokes of the cane for vandalism. The US objected, and as a gesture of respect to President Bill Clinton following his appeal, the caning was reduced to 4 strokes. In 1995, trader Nick Leeson broke Barings Bank. Barings was declared insolvent. In 1997, Silk Air flight MI-185 crashed in Indonesia. Thousands of Singaporeans came together to mourn the loss of 104 lives. Singapore's economy continued to prosper under new leadership. However, in 1997, it faced a terrible test.
Asian bourses face a tough week ahead after plunging in tandem with the sell-off in Hong Kong last week. For the week, Singapore's stocks lost nearly 210 points. Analysts say much will depend on how Hong Kong and Wall Street...
How would the new leadership react? To mitigate the damage, the government brought forward construction projects and lowered CPF contributions.
And in home news, a senior official in the Monetary Authority of Singapore says the economy will experience weak growth for the second and third quarters of 1998 compared with the same periods last year. Mr. Koh Ho-ee, Director of...
However, there would be no protectionist measures, no currency controls, no capital market intervention. Singapore stuck to its traditional, open, free market economy. In less than a year, the economy fully recovered. The nation was also developing in the sporting arena. In 1993, Singapore hosted the Southeast Asian Games, winning 50 gold medals. And in 1994, Ben Tan won Singapore's first sailing gold medal at the Asian Games in Hiroshima. By the mid-1990s, it was clear that Singapore was feeling the forces of globalization. In 1996, Singapore introduced rules for the management of the internet. And in 1999, Singapore carried out a historic mission to East Timor.
Singapore has decided that we will send a medical detachment, military observers, as well as logistic support. We will also be sending
For the first time, full-time national servicemen were sent on a peacekeeping mission. As the decade drew to a close, President Ong Teng Cheong decided not to seek a second term. S.R. Nathan was elected president.
Do solemnly affirm that I will faithfully discharge my duties as such to the best of my ability, without fear or favor, affection or ill will.
The next decade would beget increasing globalization that would bring opportunities, benefits, and also great danger.